We're going to continue the halacha sim pevov halacha hey and vov, and last time we saw that when you cook eggs in a pot, under certain circumstances, such as if it has a blood spot in it, time can transfer through the eggshell into other things that are in the pot, and because of this, there are some people who have a minhag to never cook less than 3 eggs in a pot. That is to say, when they're cooking hard-boiled or soft-boiled eggs, that they can't check the egg for blood spots before they start. So they always make sure to have at least 3 eggs in the pot. The thinking being that if it turns out that one of those eggs has a blood spot in it, the blias that are in that blood spot will be buckled into the eggs, the other eggs. So the other eggs will remain kosher even if one of the eggs happens to have a blood spot. Okay, so the question on that is, how does that help? Didn't we see that Shulchan Aruch says that if a person has a treif egg, it needs to be buckled in 61 times its volume. So, and even if it even has a blood spot, so it should need to be buckled in 61 times. So what does it help? Excuse me, to have 2 other eggs in the pot? Shouldn't you need to have 61 or something else? But not seemingly 2 should not be enough. Okay, so the answer to that question, the answer there's 2, ways of going, but the answer to that question is going to be as follows. We said last time, I mentioned in passing, that a blood spot is usher. A blood spot makes a whole egg usher because we believe the egg was shadut tichel b'kula. If you find the blood spot in the right or the wrong spot, then that tells us that a chick is developing, and the entire egg, we're choishish that the entire egg is usher also. So there are very specific places where the blood has to be in order to qualify as shadut tichel b'kula, to be choishish for that. Back in Siman Pevav, the Rambam brings that there are many different days. There are many shitas and showing them exactly what that spot is. The spots where it would make it aser would be shadut tichel b'kula. So l'maisa we're machmir for that. The Rambam says we Ashkenazim are machmir for basically for all of those shitas. But the Rambam says that since we don't really know, it's a suffix whether any kind of blood spot is the kind that we shadut tichel b'kula. So the Rambam says we only have if we don't know for sure that it's in a so to speak bad spot, then we say as follows. The Rambam says if you're not sure whether the place where the blood spot is a kind that we shadut tichel b'kula, then yesh lahata hataruvis, you could be matir a mixture of this egg with other eggs. I'm going to explain that in a minute. Since Chad betray 1 and 2 is bottle, but you should be machmir for the egg itself. But but otherwise you could be makel about the rules that it has. Now, the Taz understands that what the Rambam means to say is like this. The Rambam means to say is like this. The rule is that min b'minoi is bottle b'roiv. Mid deraisa, if you have 3 pieces of Isser that they're the same, they're considered to be the same min, and the blias from one goes into 2, or into more than itself, then it's bottle. Midrabanan, even by min b'mino, you need to have shishim. When there's a question of blias, there has to be shishim connector. So when the Ramah says v'lav hachi chad b'trei bottle, he means to say is midoraisa chad b'trei bottle. Midoraisa, this would be mutter even if it was just 1 to 2, and therefore, since the whole Isser here is a shayla Isser Drabanan, because midoraisa would have been bottle. Therefore, as long as you have more 2 kosher eggs in the pot, then we'll say safek drabanan l'kula. We'll assume that it was not shadut tichel b'kula, and the blias will be bottle. So we wouldn't eat the egg by itself, but when it comes to a shayla of being bottle into something else, we say is the midoraisa, it's for sure it is bottle. So they only have a concern of a drabanan. On a concern of a drabanan, we'll say is we could be assumed that the blood spot was not in one of those bad spots, and therefore it's bottled, even if there's just 2 eggs. Now, why does he say 2 eggs? So why definitely 2 eggs? So seemingly, it's because as we mentioned, Shulchan Aruch says we're choishish that eggs might not be the right size, and that's why all eggs might not be the same size, and that's why we needed 61 eggs instead of just 60 eggs for bittul, as we mentioned last time, according to this explanation. And therefore, since the eggs might not be the same, if I have 1 egg with a blood spot and 1 egg without a blood spot, there might not be enough to be bottled. So therefore, the minhag became, the way the Taz explains it, is the minhag to always have 3 eggs in the pot. This way we could have 1, in case 1 has a blood spot, the blias will be bottled into the other ones. Okay, and that's the reason why that Taz is the reason for the minhag that some people have to cook never less than 3 eggs in a pot. Just as an aside, the minhag is not to have an odd number of eggs. The minhag is to always have at least 3. You can have 4 or 5 or 6 or as many as you want to, as long as it's more than 3 or more. That's what the Taz says. Now, the Shach disagrees. The Shach says even if there's just one other egg in the pot, it would be good enough. I mean, you have one kosher egg, one egg with a blood spot, and then one other egg in it. That's enough to make it mutter. So that's enough. So the Marsham says, you know why it's enough to have one egg? He says it's just simple. It's math. He says if you have 2 eggs in a pot, let's say even the treif egg was way bigger than the kosher egg. Okay, I'm going to give numbers to it. Let's say the egg with the blood spot was 60 cubic centimeters. Okay, that's the size of what we call a jumbo egg. And the egg that doesn't have the blood spot was only 40 cubic centimeters. That's what we would call a medium-sized egg. Okay, so the treif one is way bigger than the kosher one. But he says, but there's water in the pot also. So let's say in our example, there was 100 cc of water in the pot, which would be a very little amount of water for 2 eggs that themselves are 100 cc. He says, even if that would be what happened, the time from the egg with the blood spot would spread into the water and into the other egg, which would come out to be, in the numbers we're giving, it would come out to be 71% of the blia would go into the water and only 29% would go into the egg. So the amount of the egg, even if the egg without the blood spot is much smaller, it would be well more enough to be mevatel the time coming out of the egg with the blood spot, and therefore there's no need to have 2 eggs. You'd only have to have 2 eggs if there was just eggs, but of course there aren't just eggs. You're not cooking eggs in a pot without water, so the water in the pot, the time spreads to all these things, so the amount that gets to the egg without the blood spot is so little that it's not a problem with being without. Okay, now that's a very fine explanation, but if you look at the Shach himself, when the Shach says you could get away with just 1 egg, get away with just having 1 other egg in the pot, the Shach says something a little more subtle. The Shach says the reason why is because the issue that there is to eat, this that we're machmir to eat, to treat eggs as we're always choshesh that it's shada tichel b'kula, that's an issue on the egg itself. But that does not apply to taruvas. Anytime it's b'taruvas, it's going to be mutter. He says, and therefore, so as long as the egg itself, when the Ramah says you shouldn't eat it, if it was the be'el lechud, you shouldn't. The Ramah's word is avlan be'el levat aser. The be'el itself should be aser. But what happens if there are other things in there? If there are other things in the pot, then it's going to be mutter because b'taruvas is mutter. Okay, the Shach has a hard time then explaining what it means chad betray, but that's what the Shach says. That it means is as long as there's something else in the pot, b'taruvas is going to be mutter. Okay, a little side question is that there are other places where we have such a rule that things that are b'taruvas are mutter, like kitnias and something that's pogrom and pasakim and all those, it has to still be b'alta b'roy. Okay, so the Shach is trying to say it as if it doesn't have to be b'alta b'roy. It's just, as long as it's taruvas it's mutter. Usually we don't say that. Usually we say is when b'taruvas means it is less than 50% this. But anyway, that's what the Shach says. You don't have to have 3 eggs in the pot. You just have to have 1 other egg in the pot. So the Taz holds you have to have 3 eggs. Those who have this minhag follow the Taz. And the Shach says, no, as long as even if you have 2 eggs in the pot is okay. So according to the Shach, there's no requirement to have anything. You have 1 egg, if it has a blood spot, don't eat it. If you have 2 eggs, the one with the blood spot, don't eat it, and the one without the blood spot, you can eat it. Okay? Now, Ramosha says about this, he says, this whole question, this whole deal that everything I've said until now is by situations when you have a chashash of shada tichel b'kula. The blood spot might be a sign that the egg is starting to form, the chick is starting to form, and therefore we have all these concerns. But Moshe says, but nowadays, the eggs that we could buy in the supermarket, those are eggs that are not fertilized eggs. Okay, we'll see more about this when we get to halacha ches. But these eggs are not fertilized eggs, and therefore there's no chashash at all of shada tichel b'kula. There is not a chance in the world that this is a chick starting to form. So Moshe says like this. He says, now you should know. He says, really, so therefore min hadin, the egg would be mutter, and you could just throw out the blood spot. But Ramesh says, but the minhag is that the people are makbid and they will not eat the egg. They throw out the entire egg. They won't just pull out the blood spot. Ramesh says, but that's fine to be machmir for the egg itself. But to be machmir for other eggs is way more than you have to be, and therefore nowadays when we're buying with our eggs, no one has to be machmir. He doesn't talk about the Shach and Taz per se, but the words he uses are very much in line with what they're saying. And essentially he's saying is that even if you generally held like the Taz and you had such a minhag, or your grandmother had such a minhag because she lived in a place where the chickens ran wild and there was a chashash of shada tichel b'kula, but nowadays with our eggs that we buy, there's no chashash that they came from fertilized eggs, and therefore you don't have to have 3 eggs according to anybody. That's it. Ramosha, the Lamaisa is there are lots of people who still follow the minhag, and they know their grandmother always made sure there was always at least 3 eggs in the pot, and that's what they do. And again, it's based on this task. Now, there's another part to this question that we have to talk about, but to get to that question, we need to do a little go off topic for a second, and that is like this. We have to talk about a shaila that the Pri Megadim talks about. It's in Simon Pevav. Oh, I'm sorry, it's in our Simon. Sorry, it starts with an R Simon. The Pri Megadim asks a shaila which it sounds at first to be very theoretical, but he has a lamaisa application, and then we'll see how it comes around to our din. And first, a drop of background. The din is a davar sheyesh lo matirin can't be batal. Something that if I wait a couple of days or a couple of hours, it'll become mutter. I can't eat it be'isr. That means and I can't eat it even if it's mixed into other things. It could be 1,000 of them. One of these mixed into 1,000, I'm not allowed to eat it. And the example of that is, the classic example is, a chicken lays an egg on Yom Tov. So the din is that egg is usher. Be'eshno b'yontiv is usher. What happens if that egg gets mixed into 1,000 other eggs? So really, minhag din it should be batal. But since it's a davar sheyesh lo matirin, why? Because tomorrow it won't be Yom Tov and you won't be allowed to eat the egg. Therefore, the egg is not batal. Okay, that's the din that davar sheyesh lo matirin is not batal. Now, one of the rules of that is that davar sheyesh lo matirin is only not batal when it's min b'minoi. If it's min b'she'eni minoi, it can be batal. And one last thing is that the Ramah says the din of davar sheyesh lo matirin not being batal is only for the thing itself. But the beliyas coming out of the davar sheyesh lo matirin, they can be batal. That's what the Ramah says. And the Shach argues that no, even the time of a davar sheyesh lo matirin also cannot be batal. So, okay. So now come back to our case. Pri Megadim has the following question. When we say that when you have certain kind of eggs, no beliyas pass from an egg that's in its peel from a regular egg that's just, let's say, from a treif animal, bird or something like that, or certain those eggs, no beliyas pass through the shell of the egg. He says it like this. He says, does that mean is zero, absolutely no beliyas pass through at all, or does he mean is it's so little passes through that little bit is for sure going to be batal in the thing that it's going into? Okay, he says, what's the difference? What's the difference if zero means absolute zero, or zero means is so little that it's going to be batal? He says, enough means like this. What would happen if we had a be'eshno to Yom Tov? What happens if you have an egg that was laid on Yom Tov and it was cooked with other eggs? And then we were able to pull that egg. We know which is the treif egg, we pulled it out. But there are beliyas from that egg into the other eggs that are in the pan. So, if we say that now this be'eshno to Yom Tov means a kind of a thing where the tam would not pass through the shell. It would qualify for, according to what the Mechaber said, of tam that doesn't pass through a shell. This qualifies for that. So what would happen now? Did tam pass through from that egg into the rest of the eggs that are there? So now, and what's the nafkamina? According to the Shach, who says that by beliyas of davar sheyesh lo matirin is also, we say it's afil be'elef lo batal, it cannot be batal. So if a tiny bit of beliyas passes through from davar sheyesh lo matirin, then the tiny bit of beliyas passes through, it cannot be batal, and all the 1,000 eggs that it was cooked with cannot be eaten. You can't eat any of them. But if we say that zero tam passes through, if none at all passes through, then no tam passes through the other eggs to stay kosher. No tam from the be'eshno to Yom Tov passes to the other eggs in their mutter. Okay, so in our simon, in Simon Pevav, when the Pri Megadim speaks about this shaila, he's mesupik. He leaves it sort of hanging, but he tells you, look elsewhere, that it's a Simon Kuf Beis in your day, and in Simon Kuf Beis he tells you it's Orchaim to Taf Kuf Yud Gimel. It's in Hilchos Yom Tov. And over there, he brings a raya from Magen Avram and the Ramah himself that in fact no beliyas pass through. Actually, it says over there that if you cook the treif egg, the be'eshno b'yontif with the other eggs, the beliyas do not make them usher. Even though, even if you hold that davar sheyesh lo matirin, the beliyas cannot be batal. Even if you hold like that, these beliyas will not make the rest of the eggs treif. That tells us, the Pri Megadim says that zero beliyas are passing through from a kosher egg. From the egg that was null to Yom Tov. And okay, now let's go back to our case that we've been talking about, which is you cook 3 eggs in a pot, or however many eggs in a pot, and one egg was later found to have a blood spot. So we saw was that the other eggs remain kosher because the way the Taz explained it was the tam from the kosher egg, from the egg with the egg with the blood spot passes through to the other eggs. But there it's batal baroiv, so mitzvah it's batal, and then we don't have to worry about the rabbanan, so we could be mekel, and that was mutter. Okay, so Shlomo Zalman brings a shaila that he said was asked by Rabbi Shul Leib Diskin. Okay, and I later found the Marsham asked the same question also. And Shulei asks the following question. He says, what I just said is wonderful for the other eggs that are in the pot. He says, but what about the water in the pot and the pot itself? He says, let's think about what's going on over here. The tam that's in we have a treif egg, that is to say, an egg with a blood spot. Tam passes out of that egg and goes into the water. And then it continues on and goes into the other eggs. So in the other eggs, the tam is batal. But what happens when that tam passes from the egg into the water? Well, when the tam passes from the egg into the water, then there's just tam of the shad tichel b'kula, tam of the treif egg, of the egg with the blood spot, in the water, and there's no min b'minai to balance it out, because there's no tam comes out of the eggs that have no blood spots. Remember, they're in their shell. No tam comes out of them. If no tam comes out of them, then the water that's in the pot has blias coming only from the egg with the blood spot. The other tam does pass through the shell, so the tam goes into the water. Tam from the egg with the blood spot goes into the water and then makes the pot treif. So how come the poskim all seem to be very happy that the water and the pot stay kosher? They don't talk about whether the other eggs are kosher, but the pot is kosher. Why is the pot kosher? He says, in the other eggs, what happens is there's blias coming in, and there's questions of salek, all kinds of Shlomo actually gives an explanation for how salek works. The min b'mina is bato, and min b'mina is ignored. He says, but in the water, there's nothing there. The only time that comes into the water is tam from the egg with the blood spot in it. So why isn't the pot and the water treif? That's Reb Shuleib's question on this din. And Rosh Hashanah wants his answer is, he says, no, the answer is that a drop of tam does pass through from the eggs without the blood spots. So now in the water, we have a mixture of water, tam from the egg with the blood spot, a little bit of tam from the eggs without the blood spot. So it's min b'minai and it's batal b'roiv. Based on the principles of salik. We ignore the einaminai, so it's tam from one egg which has blood spot, tam from two eggs that have no blood spots, and therefore the tam is batal, and the pot stays kosher. The pot stays kosher. That's what Rosh Hashanah wants to, in short, what Rosh Hashanah answers. So, as you could realize, that's not like what the Pri Megadim said. The Pri Megadim said, he brought a riot from Hilchos Yom Tov, that's not true. Zero tam passes from the eggs that don't have the blood spots. If zero tam passes through, then in the water there isn't some tam, there's no tam. The only tam that's in the water is the tam from the egg that does have the blood spot. So, back to our kasha. So Shlomo wants to give an answer and says, yes, the answer is that a little bit of tam comes out of the eggs without the blood spots, and that helps to offset the tam from the one with the blood spot. But the Pri Megadim brought a riot that's not true. The Pri Megadim brought a riot that the tam from the eggs without a blood spot no tam passes through. If no tam passes through, how are we going to make the water kosher? How could the water and the pot stay kosher? So if we stopped here, we'd have a kasha on Rosh Hashanah, which is basically Rosh Hashanah's kasha has not been answered according to the Pri Megadim. But I later saw that the Yad Yehuda goes to this shocking chart that I just told you. I later saw it in the Yad Yehuda. The Yad Yehuda is in Siman Pevav, not by us. I'm sorry, in Siman Pevav. Sorry, Samach Vav, in Hilchos Peitzim, in Samach Vav, and the Yad Yehuda, he starts off with a question. He says, why isn't the pot treif? So he says, because maybe some tam passes through from the kosher eggs into the water also, and that's good enough to offset off the tam from the egg, from the egg with the blood spot. But he says, no, but look at the Pri Megadim. He says the Pri Megadim says that no tam passes through. So what's going to be? That's his question. Okay, basically exactly what I just told you before. Or he also, of course, doesn't quote the people whose names I said, but he quotes the Pri Megadim. He brings us the question: how could the pot be kosher? This potential answer, essentially what Rosh Hashanah said, and he says, but it's not true because the Pri Megadim says not that. Okay, so he gives an answer, which is in essence is going to be very similar to Rosh Hashanah, but with a little twist. And he says like this. He says the Gemara says that Rabbi Yehuda is the one who holds that a mashahu of tam, when it's min b'minoi, can never be batal. He holds that by min b'minoi is not batal no matter what. That's Rabbi Yehuda's shita. The Gemara says that even according to Rabbi Yehuda, the Gemara says if you have tzir from a treif fish, then whatever tzir is, not important for right now, tzir, it's treif. Tzir from a non-kosher fish, even according to Rabbi Yehuda, could be batal in 192 times. If there's 192 times as much heter as isser, then it could be batal. Okay? So, the Gemara says why, but Rabbi Yehuda holds some min b'mina is also b'mashu. So the Gemara says is the reason why it's mutter is because it's zeya b'alma. Okay, zeya b'alma. What does that mean? So he says the Yad Yehuda says the Gemara means to say is there's such a thing as a tam that it's so little, it's so minuscule, so zeya, like it's sweat, it's so nothing, it's such a minimal amount of tam in the thing that even Rabbi Yehuda, who holds that min b'mina can't be bottled, he will hold that in this case it can be bottled, even though usually he holds min b'mina even the mashu. There are certain isurim that they're so small, they're so minuscule, they're so non-important that therefore they can be bottled even according to Rabbi Yehuda. Now they need 192 times, but they could be bottled. Okay, now as an aside, it's very not clear in the Gemara over there that that's what it means. Taisus there talks about that Zeya Ba'alma means it's Asam D'Rabbanan, and there's all kinds of to-dos in posting about what that word Zeya Ba'alma means, who are all not like what the Yad Yehuda is saying. And the Yad Yehuda also brings another din about Gid Hanasha being bottled that also talks about having tiny amounts, and that's also not such a partial to write what he says. But this is what the Yad Yehuda says. He says is that there's a tiny amount, and those tiny amounts can be bottled even when there's an Isamashu. And he says that's pshat in the Rashba. Again, we could put the Gemara on the side. He brings a right from the Gemara. Put the Gemara on the side. Even the Rashba says that talking about blood spot in an egg, the Rashba says is that the blia that comes out. He says "Einoi poletes ella zeya b'alma." The same word zeya b'alma. It's the time that passes through the shell passes through is zeya b'alma, and therefore when the Gemara says no time passes through, it didn't really mean none. It meant is so minuscule that it doesn't count. So the Yad Yehuda is saying what the Rashba means to say is that it's so little that when we come to rules of Isser Mashu, it doesn't make a difference. It does need to be bottled. It's a tiny bit and it needs to be bottled, but that bittul works even when something is Asur B'Mashu. So here we're hearing this idea, which is it's possible that something could be very tiny, but the Pri Megadim had said when things are very tiny, they're Asur B'Mashu, and the Yad Yehuda is saying from this Rashba and his own based sort of on a Gemara that no, it's possible for a tiny bit to come out, but that tiny bit is in such a form, it's a Zeya B'Alma, whatever that means, that it is not Asur B'Mashu. So therefore, in Hilchos Yom Tov, when it says that the tam that comes out of the Be'er Shel Yom Tov can be bottled, that's not a raya that no time comes out. Maybe really a tiny bit comes out, and the tiny bit that comes out is Eina Pleta says is Elazei B'Alma. That tiny bit comes out. That tiny bit that comes out is not within the rules of something that's also b'mashu, and it can be bottled on Yom Tov. And therefore, back to our cases, since it's only it is a tiny bit that's coming out, so that saves our pot. Because the way it saves the pot is because a tiny bit is coming out. So the egg with the blood spot is giving off tam into the water. But the eggs without the blood spots are also giving off tiny bits of water, and therefore the pot actually has a mixture of min b'mina. The pot has a mixture of tam from an egg with a blood spot and tam from eggs without blood spot, and therefore we save the pot in the water. Okay, now just a question on this Yad Yehuda is that he's saying it's tiny and it's very small amounts. So the whole taz that explained the bitl of min b'minoi and chad b'trei bottle has to be more heter than iser. Not clear how that's going to work. You know, 2 eggs giving off a tiny bit is going to be enough to be bottle the tam from the blood spot that gives off regular tam. But that's what the Yad Yehuda wants to say. But as sort of as we said beforehand, the Yad Yehuda is essentially saying not with the Pri Megadim. The Pri Megadim says, I have a raya from Hilchos Yom Tov to this rule. I have a raya from Hilchos Yom Tov that 0 tam passes through an egg. And the Yad Yehuda is trying to say is that no, 0 doesn't mean 0. 0 means such a tiny bit that doesn't even fall under the rules of Isser Mashu. But that's the answer that he tries to give to this question.